This episode of Enterprise Security Weekly is brought to you by IT Pro TV, an easy, entertaining approach to online IT training. Access over 2,000 hours of up-to-date, high-quality video content live and on demand for a free 7-day trial and 30% off the lifetime of your account. Visit itpro.tv/enterprise security and use the code ES30. In order to deliver the maximum degree of privacy, personal data must be protected without action from an individual. In fact, this requirement is defined in the General Data Protection Regulation, also known as GDPR. What if you could reliably and efficiently build privacy into your information security programs by default? StealthBits Technologies provides solutions that allow data to be collected and used in a manner that achieves GDPR compliance. Privacy by design and by default is not just a GDPR requirement, it's the foundation of StealthBits Technologies. Visit stealthbits.com to learn more today. Are you worried about PCI compliance? Does your development team understand or care about security? Are you ready to face a breach of your customer's sensitive data? See the worst that can happen before it does. Black Hills Information Security can help you help management see the future. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to find out how a web application penetration test can mitigate the risk before you go live. Welcome back, everyone, to Enterprise Security Weekly. We have Don Pezet from IT Pro as our special guest, itpro.tv as our special guest today, and we've got an announcement. Their courses now include Apple Certified Support Professional, CompTIA Security Plus, and ITIL Planning Protection and Optimization. Premium annual memberships include all video content as well as access to virtual labs and Q&A forums. You'd pay $85.70 a month or $857 per year, but we've got a special offer. For a limited time, get 30% off a monthly membership for the lifetime of your active subscription using the code ES30.
Did you just say 30% off?
It is 30. It was 50 for a little while, so if you took advantage of that, good for you. But now, we said that was for a limited time. Now it's 30%.
Just crazy good deal. The 50% off thing I thought was just insane. There's just no way anybody could survive and be in business. I mean, this guy's he's right below me. This guy's purpose in life is apparently to lose money. So go sign up. Take advantage of this man's business ignorance right now, because this is a limited time offer.
It's not just me. There's a whole staff of people behind the ignorance. It's
fantastic. And
we've seen
go down.
We've seen them
together.
We've been there to the offices. Really cool. To say it's a really cool place is an understatement. It's an awesome studio they have here. Awesome office design. I'm so jealous of their office. John, if you saw their office, you'd be like,
no,
oh my God.
But I'm just seeing a small portal of it, and I've got to ask, those Dell servers off your right-hand shoulder, are those on?
Absolutely not.
Okay, good, because I was wondering how you got them that quiet.
Yeah,
those are. It's all old equipment. None of it powered on. None of it actually functioning right now.
Just for show. It's awesome.
No. It's real. Someone power these on now.
Yeah.
No. But we got to have props. I have a wall. It looks like, to be honest, anytime I present.
Uh-oh, John froze. No, come back, John. I was just going to start my introduction to this wonderful topic.
That's what happens when your studio is in the basement.
Apparently so. The overlords that control his space have unplugged his internet. Like, John's having too much fun. We must unplug his internet. That looks like what happened. Like, someone just straight up unplugged his internet. Denial of service attack. Backhoe attenuation. Something. Oh, and there.
See, this is when we need screen drawing tools. We could draw a little mustache on them and turn it loose. And
oh boy. Well, so I'll start this segment, Don, by talking about how, like, I haven't been like a hands-on pen tester in an actual environment in a little while now, and I kind of took a break from that. I did a lot of IoT research and a lot of other projects. I left my full-time job to do Security Weekly full-time and focus on that. And I'm having a lot of fun. Don't get me wrong. This is awesome. But I started to look back into pen testing. And it's not even that long ago, maybe like a couple of 2 years maybe or so. And I started to look back into hey, what are pen testers
You've reached
doing?
John Strand. Please leave a message.
Sorry,
Thanks.
John. John, we love you. There's our message for you. So I started to look back into what pen testers are doing today to be successful and correlating that with what attackers are doing today, and then looking at Josh Abrams' research about the methods they use to get complete domain control. And I'm like, wow, it's like all the same stuff. I'm like, huh. I'm like, that's interesting. I'm like, and then I started thinking, well, I wonder what it's like to defend a Windows environment today. And like, as it turns out, and John, you know this story very well because we've talked about this a lot, like to defend a Windows environment, I'm like, it's friggin' more complicated than ever. Like, oh my God. Like, we're going backwards in terms of security, I feel like, for these environments. And for that reason, because of everything that I've been researching lately and my experiences in the past, I'm like, I'm kind of a fan of deception technology, John. I think this is a turning point for me where I'm like, yeah, no, especially for Windows, but even web environments as well. Like, I think all of our environments, cloud deployments, they're so complex today that I'm like, yeah, no, like if there was ever a time we need deception technology, we need it now.
It's now. And it's basically just trying to create those little pit stops. Can you guys hear me now?
Yes, we can.
We can.
Yeah.
The internet went down hard, I guess. But yeah, it's basically getting to the point where, like you said, the complexity of all of it, we need to start setting traps just so we can actually detect them. Are you guys talking about the TrapX article?
Yeah, so I hadn't started on yet. I talked about my pen testing and how like I used methods a long time ago. In fact, John, several years ago, we worked on a pen test, and I think the only way that I got in was like a WPAT attack. And we're talking like 6 or 7 years ago, right? And
dude,
now
we still use WPAT today. I mean, it's still
that's what I'm saying.
techniques.
It's the same stuff. I'm like, oh my God, we need to make this better. So I'm kind of, it's one of my hot topics that I've been talking about lately. And I'm like, we need also deception technology to defend against all of these, not just like it is a threat, right? But to cover all of our exposures in today's environment, I'm like, you need deception. Now, I think someone talked about this in the previous segment too. Like, you can't just like not do security at all and just go like, hey, I'm going to put up a honeypot and some deception technology.
Yeah, that would be
like,
bad.
No, like you need a plan. You need people to be doing stuff and use this to help you cover all of your exposure. So I'll start there. John or Don, if you want to chime in.
I want to take it. Can we take this as a segue to the TrapX article, which I love? So we've been talking about TrapX for a while. Really, really cool vendor. But one of the things we kept on talking about is how do you actually get isolation and how do you funnel the attacker into the network? So I'm going to go through my emotions as I read this release from TrapX. So it's like, TrapX, a global leader in deception-based advanced cybersecurity defense. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah. Today announced its integration of its deception grid technology with Forescout, which is freaking awesome. I'm super excited. It's like, woo! And then all of a sudden it says a leading Internet of Things security company.
Yeah,
it's like,
why are they saying that? We've read that in their press releases. Like, they just keep saying, why are they saying that? I don't know why they're trying to position themselves in the market like that. I mean, I do.
We need to drop CASB, IoT, and we've got to have cloud in this article. I wonder if they have cloud actually. No, they actually don't. So they stuck with the IoT thing. It was just like, oh my God. But that being said, this is cool. This is the type of kind of partnering that we need to have because Forescout is awesome. I hate to call it network access control because that's not, they hate it whenever people call it network access control, but let's just call it network access control for basically doing isolation, segmentation, role-based access control at the network level. It's an awesome product. It is a very, very, very cool product. And to have that integrate with deception technology, that's just the coup de grace. That is beautiful. So this is, if you're a Forescout customer, you probably need to look at TrapX right now because it would be a very, very dangerous network for a pen tester to drop into.
Don, I wanted to give you a chance to kind of chime in on what John and I have been talking about. So,
this technology has changed a lot, even in the last 5 years. Because if you think about, I mean, Paul and John, you guys have been in this industry for a long time. You remember the early versions of this, like La Brea, right, where we're just trying to trap ping sweeps, and that has evolved so much that you have systems like elusive networks, right? They have their system where it's dynamically creating these false servers on the network to draw in attackers, and it's bringing them up and taking them down and making them change. So it's constantly evolving and not just one static, hey, here's this fake environment I'm creating. And once you figure that out, you're kind of screwed because now you can just go for the real server. So that technology is way more advanced than what we used to have. And it, in a way, in my opinion, it's kind of like surrendering and saying, you know what, screw it. I have these well, we use IoT, right? I got these IoT devices, and instead of buying ones that focus more on security, I'll keep my cheap crap and I'll just use my deceptive software to be able to try and intercept attacks. That's not really how it's intended. But like what John said is if we combine it, right? If we use deception software and we combine that with our other technologies, we can end up with a very, very safe, very difficult to penetrate network.
And it doesn't take much. It doesn't take much at all.
I find it interesting.
To mess with an attacker.
I couldn't get over that you mentioned La Brea, because apparently Tom Liston was a leader in deception technologies before that was a thing. That's how awesome Tom is.
Yeah, and if you hit a network that's running La Brea and you try to do enumeration to find other nodes to try to attack, it does thoroughly mess with you. I mean, once you know it's there, you can kind of get around it with a couple of things. But, just a few small hiccups can really mess with an attacker's day. And I know that there's companies out there, some good ones like, Facebook and some of the other ones that are doing some amazing deceptive technologies in their own network and talking with some of the people at these networks. It works. Symmetria, Gadi Evron has all kinds of case studies wherever they're doing deceptive technologies with these breadcrumbs, and they have these really wonderful write-ups of detecting attackers, detecting the lateral movement, cataloging everything that they do, and that's powerful. That's really, really powerful.
Well, and there are products on the market today, take back to an AD environment, like John, was one of the first things you and your team does, like if you start to gain a foothold in the environment, is enumeration, right? In an Active Directory, the technologies that exist today are either monitoring the enumeration or feeding you some bad data based on that enumeration. We're actually talking with a company that does that type of stuff today. I'm starting to delve into that. And I think that's really interesting. I think that's really a great approach. I'm not saying that excuses you from trying to secure your AD environment, but it certainly helps, right? And, of course, integration with the network access control, or not network access control, is it NNAC, not network access control, is awesome, right? So as soon as someone, even if they're in that enumeration phase, basically you kick them off. And if you're not kicking them off, into a place where they can't access everything, you're kicking them off into a place that can access a bunch more deception technologies. That's a huge win. I don't think you're going to catch 100% of attackers that way, but certainly it's going to help, I think.
That's true. And the other thing you're doing is collecting data, which you can use if you go to litigation, right? And that doesn't normally happen with external attackers, right? They're outside your country, jurisdiction is crazy and all that. But if it's an inside attack, if you have this document evidence of somebody crawling your network, that's something you can submit in courts, and that's kind of the other piece that goes into the play.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is in some of this deception technology is kind of an offshoot of that is, looking at network traffic versus logs, right? And I think that there are certainly a lot of problems with looking at logs. And while you can detect behavior in logs, there are certain other communications, right, that are between workstations that in the network stack, right, you're not going to get if it's workstation to workstation. And I don't know why everyone just doesn't enable all the firewalls on all of their workstations so that you can't laterally move. But even if you're, protecting the server side of it, if you're trying to laterally move from workstation to workstation, that can evade a lot of technologies. However, if you're detecting that behavior on the host or somewhere deeper inside your network and applying deception to that, I think that can help in that situation.
I think a lot of that's just lack of knowledge, because like most switches, you can create private VLANs where the clients can see their gateway, but the clients can't see each other. And it really helps to eliminate leapfrog attacks and other things that happen. People just either don't know the features there or don't care to turn it on and then regret it later.
See, I already liked you, but that just set it over the top. Next time, you get an extra hug. Because Paul and I have been talking about private VLANs for almost 10 years now. It's one of those things that we have people that are like, you and Paul are old. Because we're always like, back in our day. And Paul would be like, at the university, we'd implement private VLANs. But crap, that's been around forever. And it so complicates an attack.
It absolutely does. What about on the website? And John, I know you and I did some research, and Ben Jackson wrote some stuff. Like on the website, deception is really cool. And then that's a whole other environment, right, that is totally different from what we've been talking about, where I think deception is pretty awesome. I know we talked with Distill Networks, right? They're kind of similar to that, right, where they're detecting bots versus real people. And if you could combine, I don't know how much they do on the deception side, but on a web front, right? I mean, the simplest thing was like robots.txt, right? And you put something in there that doesn't exist, you'd see who hit it. And that was like our form of deception.
But we go back to Adrian, Iron Geek. Don't ever go to Iron Geek's robots.txt file. It's kind of one of those things that's secure. Yeah, don't. Internet Storm Center or SANS, if you try to hit their robots.txt, bad things can happen to you. Ben Jackson with Web Labyrinth would be a great tool. Ethan wrote a tool called Spider Trap. And there's a lot of things on the website that you can do that are really easy to implement to greatly frustrate it. And it's cool, Paul. Actually, you have one of the leaders in deception technology implementation. You have Benjamin Donnelly from Promethean Information Security there, and he's one of those people. Like, if you need help implementing it, he's really, really good at that because he's just, to be honest, he's just evil. I don't want to ever test anything that he's actually defended or set up because he will destroy you. But all these technologies and techniques exist in ADHD, which is the distribution we release and we keep up to date, and Ben keeps that up to date as well. And it's also in our class. And we've been talking about this, like you said, over the past 5-6 years, but it's beautiful to finally see this crap starting to get some traction in the industry and seeing people implement it with good effect. And web technology is one of those places that we haven't seen as many vendors as there should be moving into quite yet.
Yeah, like I wonder what in more modern web applications, right? When we were doing that research, John, there wasn't as much technology available as we have today.
There's nothing. Yeah,
like HTML5 didn't exist, but it would be interesting to see what you could implement today in web technologies with respect to deception that would improve the overall security of your websites. I don't know if it would improve the security as much as it would just take the attackers somewhere else. It would be more.
That was the comment resilient. I was going to make.
Yeah, because it's not security. You're just redirecting, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and you still need people to be able to get to your website. And so when an attacker can legitimately get to the actual web server, you still have your traditional security you've got to maintain there. There's no substitute.
Well, and that's always been my thing with honeypots and deception technologies is, like, how do you and it was one thing, like, for me, when I worked at a university, we would do some of this as well, right? We would set up a dark net IP space. And I'm like, well, where should they go? I'm like, well, we should take them to a site that just, like, compromises their web browser, loads some malicious JavaScript so we can get access. I'm like, wait, what if a legitimate user, like, goes into your deception technology and then is either succumbing to your traps or is taken offline, right? They can't do their work now, right? Let's say they need to access a server, they fall into a trap, they get put in a different network, and they're like, I don't have access to what I had access to before. Like, what happened? Like, that would be bad. How do you prevent that from happening?
That's going to come down to your own company policies. That if we go to like older school technologies here, it's kind of been around a while. That if you have things like what was it on Cisco switches? Like NAC or port security or wherever, where if you exceed a certain amount of MAC addresses, it trips the flag and it shuts the port off and it holds it off until you go to the support desk. Well, now the legitimate person who's supposed to be on that connection is no longer able to communicate. But the trade-off there is, you inconvenience one of your employees. Yeah, you reduce their productivity, but at the same time, you avoided an attack. So you kind of have to make the call, and I think every company has to do that, is make the call on what's more valuable to them.
But that's what sucks, though, is a lot of times when we base our concept on risk, it's on things that we've actually encountered. It's like the frying pan analogy. You don't touch the frying pan because you've touched the frying pan and you know that it's hot and you don't touch it. Again, if you're trying to implement these technologies and somebody legitimately cannot access their files, that risk to that one user and not being able to access their files for maybe an hour is now the risk that you're worried about because it's visceral. You felt that pain. and it tends to outweigh the risk associated with an attacker being able to laterally move in your network or gain access to sensitive data and files. And I think that that's the real problem that security is fighting all the time. We're constantly trying to protect against these perceived, almost mythical risks, but the real risks that security impacts on the organization happen quite often, and that's why security tends to lose. Now, as ransomware and some of these other things continue to create a visceral immediate risk in organizations, I think that that's going to tip, because they're actually starting to see that threat actor become manifest. But until that happens in a more regular clip, I think that people are still going to err on the side of making sure that people can get access to their data and their files.
Yeah, I think that works until you have a situation that I ran into once where someone was plugged into a port, and for whatever, I don't know if it was another switch or causing a loop or whatever, or it was just being blocked, but whatever, any port they plugged into, they're like, oh, I'm blocked on that port. That port must be bad. Let me plug into another port, and just get plugging into port. And then all those switch ports like turn off. So it's not just one user now. They're impacting like all of these other users because they're essentially like shutting off all the ports on the switch. Oops. Hate it when that happens.
Yes. I hate stuff on switches too.
So I think I like deception technologies today. I think more so than ever before. I think they've come a long way in terms of technology. I think that a lot of the techniques that like John and I have talked about, and I love Don's analogy going back to La Brea tar pit, right? I think we're taking those types of concepts and tools and ideas and merging them into our overall security program, which I think is great. I think that's where they belonged in the first place. We just didn't quite know how to integrate them, and they had to evolve. And now that they are, I think it's a great thing for people to look into. I will say, like, the how tall do I need to be to ride the ride? Like, you need to have some other stuff, a lot of other stuff in place before you start considering some of these technologies, but I think they're important.
Yeah, yeah.
Have you seen it play out on Wi-Fi, John? Have you tested, like, Wi-Fi networks that when you start doing crazy things, they shut you off or move you somewhere else? There are things that exist like that over time.
There are. Right? Yeah. Aruba actually has had some technologies for years where you can define a perimeter within your environment. And you can say, these are our wireless access points. If all of a sudden a new access point arises in the middle, it can start DOSing anything that it does a DOF attack to anybody that tries to join that particular access point. So there's a lot of those types of technologies. And that's good to shut down the wireless access point that your printer may bring to the table. But that is absolutely active defense. Now, as far as deception, creating wireless hotspots that are more honeypots, I don't see that hardly ever in commercial environments today at all.
I've done it before. I experimented with that. It's really hard to prevent regular users or people that are just like not part of your organization that happen to be walking by and go, oh, hey, look, an open hotspot. And then all of a sudden they're loading malicious JavaScript. It's difficult to do on Wi-Fi because of the physical barriers that don't exist.
I'm always shocked by the cell phones that have the option to automatically join non-secure networks, right? I'm not sure if the latest iOS does it, but in iOS 9, you had that option. And so here's these phones that are theoretically secure, but they'll join any random network. You know, that's the kind of danger you have out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you're right, John. I haven't seen anyone use wireless honeypots effectively. I know it's something we've talked about.
Even though we had it in the class, right?
Yeah,
I know we have seen it at Black Hat. We have seen it at Black Hat and at DEF CON, though. We have, actually.
Yes.
But not in a commercial environment or on a customer site.
Yep. Yeah, no, that's true. Those larger conferences will create places to trap people that are doing bad things to monitor the network. So that's interesting. I'm sure there's people out there shouting that they're doing it in their networks, and we want to hear. We want to hear from you. Absolutely.
Yeah, shoot us an email from your work network and say we do have a wireless honeypot, and we'll read it out in our next show.
There you go. Anything else in closing on deception technologies and honeypots?
I think you said it best, Paul, that it needs to be a part of your security solution, not your security solution.
Absolutely. Well, Don Pezet, thank you very much for appearing on this week's show. John, thank you as always. That will conclude this episode of Enterprise Security Weekly.